Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Hometown Heroes. I'm Mike Kenichi, and I'm excited tonight because we have a very special guest. When you think of the Derby Running Club, when you think of cross country, track, you name it, you have to think of her name right at the top of the list. She was a tremendous runner for Derby Middle School, Derby High School. It is my pleasure to have on the show today Nicole Rizzo. And Nicole, I want to thank you for coming on today. I really do appreciate this.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, Nicole, let me ask you. I believe your first introduction to running was when you were at the young age, maybe 4 or 5 years old, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, so talk about that a little bit.
So, when I was 4 and my sister was 8, my parents took us to Platt Tech in Milford during a summer series. And so we would run about 50 yards. My mom would hold my hand, and we would go back for a few weeks every summer for a while.
Right. And let me ask you, I mean, at 4 years old, you can't really decide if you really have a love for running. But I do think, though, early on, you could kind of tell you were good at it. I mean, if I remember correctly, too, uh, you started it for a little bit and then you didn't really go back to it till like fourth or fifth grade, right?
Exactly. They made us run the mile in gym class, which everyone knows about and everyone pretty much hates. But I
Yeah.
actually enjoyed it, and me and my friend Rachel did. So that was kind of the beginning of running for me, the official beginning.
Right. And let me ask you, Nicole, because I ran track in high school, and one of the things that I think is very tough sometimes is you have to really have a love for it. Now, I enjoyed it. I wouldn't say I loved it. And sometimes when you don't really have that passion for it, it's hard for you to do well because you really have to love to run.
Absolutely. Running is very painful. So if you don't love it, it doesn't seem worth it. So I've definitely had a love hate relationship with running over the years, but mostly love.
Right. And now, I believe, what made you decide to go back to it in fifth grade?
Well, I was with my mom one day and we were waiting to pick up my sister from softball practice. She was at Derby High. And I ran a few laps on the track. My mom wanted to keep me busy. So she said, go away from me, go running. And I really liked it. And that same day, Mr. Gazzo, the middle school cross country coach, came up to me and my mom, and he was very scary, very intimidating. But my mom kind of nudged me toward him, and she told him, Nicole might be on your team next year. And he said, all right, and then kind of walked away back to his team to yell at them. And then I was scared of him, so I didn't think I would be joining, but that's kind of how it started.
Right. And let me ask you, talk about the importance of those running clubs, though, Nicole, because I really feel the success that Derby had in cross country, indoor track, outdoor track really started with the running club because you have to have a good feeder program. And I think when Gazzo started that program, I mean, it just kind of set the tone for how Derby running was going to be when these kids got to high school.
Oh, exactly. That's kind of where it all starts is, sixth, seventh, and eighth grade. On a competitive level, we always did well at all of the road races. We did about one per month, and you would just see our sea of red uniforms at all the races. And we all did pretty well. We all continued to get personal records year after year. Um, and so that was a competitive aspect of it. But for like the teamwork and the camaraderie that also started then, because in middle school you're trying to figure out who you are and what group you belong in, and that was our group. At sometimes the team was pretty big. We had 30 to 40 runners, so we all kind of became a family.
Right. And I would say, Nicole, running in fifth and sixth grade, I mean, that's not easy for a 10 and 11-year-old kid to really embrace running because kids at that age, they really don't like to do a lot of distance running like that. But it just seems like to me that that was the great thing about Gazzo is he had those kids there all the time. And I mean, when that river walk opened up, he was there all the time on Sundays and the summers with them. And I really think that it's a credit to him because he really got those kids to like love running, which is not an easy thing to do when you're 10 and 11 years old.
Oh, absolutely. Gazo is the best. He is one of my biggest role models for sure. And he, I think, instilled good character in all of us, whether it was, he didn't care how hot or cold it was, as long as, we were wearing gloves and things like that. Yeah, running on the ice, or on the snow, not the ice. He wouldn't let us do that. But, early mornings in Westport, we would leave at 6:30 to run races in the summer. Um, just all the time, 10 400-meter
Right.
repeats up the Nutmeg Ave Hill outside of the high school. So he kind of made us all learn the importance of hard work, but he also made sure that we had a lot of fun. We were constantly cracking jokes too. So I think the mix of having that feeling of competence with the amount of fun that we were having, like that was our thing to do. Running club practice was our social life.
Right. And one thing about Gazo that was cool too, Nicole, is he would give each kid a nickname. I know, like he called one of his runners Tigger, another one the Missing Link. So I mean, he always had these cool nicknames for all the kids. So I mean, it just seemed like to me that he enjoyed the interaction with the kids, even though he was their coach and he had to push them to be their very best. He knew, it's like you said, he knew how to let them have fun too.
He absolutely did. Me and my friend Rachel both got our nicknames at the same time. We were in sixth grade, and I don't really remember this that well, but Gazo's memory is gold. So he said that one day it was pouring rain, and he looked out the window, and someone said, "Oh, there's two girls running," and he was kind of squinting, and then someone said, it was me and my friend Rachel, and he said, "They're doggone robots." And so then we come inside and we're like, "Gazo, you told us to go out there and run. That's why we were running in the pouring rain." And he was like, "I didn't say such a thing," but he did. But then he said, "Rizzo, you're C3PO. Rachel Fleischer, you're R2D2, like best robot friends." And so then we were robots. Even to this day, he just calls us robots.
Yeah, I mean, he's really done a great thing for Derby. I mean, never mind as an educator, but what he's done as a coach too. Just he's gotten so many kids to come out for this running program, and it's really, like I said, benefited them when they got to high school. So let me ask you this, Nicole. Did you have any interest in other sports? I mean, was it strictly running once you got to middle school, or did you play other sports?
I played a bunch of different sports. I tried dance, soccer, basketball, softball. I did softball for a while. I didn't like it. I thought that it was normal to kind of dread going to practice. It's one of those things, I think with a lot of things in life, you don't realize how much you didn't enjoy something till it's over, and then until you do something else and you enjoy it more. So that's kind of how I figured out that running was for me because I always really looked forward to practices and meets.
Right. And one of the things I've always said to people, Nicole, when I ran track, especially because when you're playing football, you're playing basketball, you know, it's intense. The games move fast. So you're constantly, there's a lot of pressure. And not that there's not pressure in running, but I always felt like track for me was the most enjoyable sport because the bus rides to meets were great. The bus rides home. I mean, it made those long bus rides fun because of the camaraderie that you made with different people. And I made a lot of friends like that. So I have to believe that that had to be the same thing for you and your fellow runners. That had to be one of the best things that you got out of doing running as well.
Oh, absolutely. We always had a blast before the meets, after the meets, on the bus, just hanging out, blasting music, cheering each other on. It was this whole event, cross country race is only 5K long. What is that, 20 something minutes? But then the part about getting there, the warm up, being together, then cheering the boys team on, and then coming home. We were with each other for a good amount of time, and even during training, we spent a lot of time together.
Right. So let me ask you, Nicole. As eighth grade was nearing the end, I mean, did you feel confident in your running ability, and was the attitude going to be that I'm going to continue to run in high school, and like there was never a doubt to give it up, right?
Well, I struggled with my eating in middle school. So, um, I didn't get diagnosed with an eating disorder, so I'm just going to kind of stick with under eating and over exercising. But that's really what was going on. And I was very underweight, very unhealthy, um, fainted at school. Just, it wasn't a good time. So, I was kind of forced to take time off of running. So that was like right at the end of middle school. So I wasn't sure what was going to happen. But then once I gained some of the weight back, I was able to start running again. But I was unsure. I had no idea what was going to happen. But I'm glad that I was able to go back and be on the team with my friends.
Right. And when you entered high school, Nicole, I believe it was 2015, I think was your freshman year, correct? I could be wrong, or was it 2014? Um, you the Derby running program had quite the run in those 4 years. Talk about freshman year when you did go back to it and stuff. What was the thing? You ran for Gazzo for so many years. Now you've got Nick DeLugo, who's a tremendous coach. Just talk to me about running for Nick and what that first year was like for you.
Oh, the first year. So same thing as when I met Gazzo, completely terrified of Gazzo, completely terrified of Coach DeLugo, just for different reasons. You know, it's intimidating to be a scrawny freshman on this team where all the other girls were really fast. And freshman year, it was kind of about finding our footing, me, Sarah, and Rachel. Um, we all ran together and we
Yeah.
kind of got used to this culture of the team. It was very, very intense. And I mean, we all loved it. We fed into it. We've always wanted to win. We were always very competitive. So it was kind of getting used to that. And then we won a lot of meets more than we thought that we would have, considering that me, Sarah, and Rachel were all freshmen. So we didn't know what was going to happen, but we ended up being runners up at the Class S state championships.
Right. And just talk about that a little bit, Nicole, because I mean, you girls are 14, 15-year-old kids, but I mean, they're, the program had gotten so good that I know there was probably that pressure you felt to win. I mean, is it hard sometimes when you're trying to run your race and trying to do the best you can and you're thinking about the team as well? I mean, was there times when the you put maybe too much pressure on yourself to perform?
Oh, yes, probably more often than not. At first, freshman year, when we found out that we got second at that meet, we were so excited because we didn't expect that at all. But then once that happened, like that was the bar. We had to do better. We wanted to win. So, yeah, absolutely a lot of pressure. I feel like when you're that young, the race feels like the biggest thing in the whole world. Like you think that if you run a bad time, like that's the end. You messed it up. You made the team lose, all of that. And a lot of us on the team had that mentality because we just wanted to be the best. We always wanted to be our time every single race, and we wanted to win every meet, and that's just not possible.
Right. So talk to me about 2015 season because that was the first of three consecutive MBL championships, and it's always important to get that first one. So what was that like for you being on that team and being a part of an MBL championship? Because that's a big deal. Because again, Derby for a while didn't have a cross country program, and it kind of came back. I want to say 2011 or 12. So I mean, to win that MVL had to be very rewarding for all of you.
It was. I remember that meet. Most of us had a good race too, and so that makes a big difference. If one person has a good race and everyone else kind of does okay, it's not as exciting, but it was a great day all around. I remember specifically training a lot for that race with Gabby and Kylie, especially over the summer. And so I think that's part of the pressure too, is you spend all June, July, August, September, and then just getting ready for the end of October. So it was a great feeling. I remember we were all so ecstatic and we just loved celebrating that we were able to win. It felt like a big deal. And then we kind of got used to it and then the pressure rose.
Right. And the thing that people don't understand, Nicole, is to be successful at sports like that, cross country, track, the practices sometimes are not enjoyable. People might think they are, but they're not all the time. I could think of the half mile repeats. I think there was a time we had to do 8 or 9 of them in a row, which was torture. And then for cross country, I know you girls had to do mile repeats a lot in practice to build your strength, your stamina. Talk about what that's like preparing so you could run a good race, because that's got to be very uh, rough to do.
It really was. I would say the summer's difficult because a lot of the times you're by yourself. So you have your
Yeah,
training plan and it's on you to get up before it's 90 degrees out. So I try to get up super early, 5 or 6, and just do the run. And during the summer, most of the runs are very, very, very long. So I
yeah,
remember before freshman year, I kind of couldn't even follow the plan. I didn't try. Then before sophomore year, I would do it, but then I'd be like sitting on the curb for like 10 minutes and then I would keep going. And then junior year, I was able to do these full 8 to 12 mile runs without any problem. But then once you get to the school year starting, that's when you have the mile repeats and the 400 repeats and the hill
yeah.
repeats. And so it is pretty painful. It's difficult in running because you need to accept that you won't feel good every day. But you also need to watch that if you feel horrible every day, that something's wrong. So you need to kind of find that balance.
Right. And let me ask you, which one do you prefer, running on the track or running on the road? Because they both have their advantages and disadvantages. But the track, obviously, now with the beautiful track Derby has, it's probably a lot easier on someone's legs. But running on the road is fun in the sense that you're going to a path somewhere. You keep running. You're not doing something in a circle all the time. But at the same time, running on the road does a lot to your legs, and it's not easy to run on the road like that.
Yes, that is a very good point and a good question. For some reason, I would do a lot of our 8 or 9 mile runs completely on the track. But looking back, there must have been something wrong with me who no one does that. That's like 35 laps on the track. So I don't know why I did that, but I do miss the cinder track in Derby. That was really good on the legs. And I liked running there, but the road is nice. There's a lot more scenery. You just have to watch out for traffic. I'm
Yeah.
lucky that I've never had a physical injury for running. But I remember Gabby would get a lot of shin splints, and a lot of girls on the team would have those issues.
Right. And let me ask you, Nicole, did you run year round? I know a lot of those kids will do indoor track, then they'll do outdoor track. I mean, did you run, throughout the entire school year, or did you take a break at all during the winter?
Well, so taking a break ever since I had to take one before high school was always very important to me. I kind of understood that time off from running could make you faster. If you just keep going, 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 you're going to get burnt out. You're not going to be able to build back up with that speed. So I think that we took about 2 weeks off in between each season. So after cross country, then after indoor, then after outdoor. And I think that was really helpful, but still, yeah, all year round, all seasons of the year.
Right. And correct me if I'm wrong, Nicole. I think by the time I want to say your junior or senior year, because of all the running, and I think you did the 4x800s, and I think there was a point where you and your friends were starting to hate running a little bit. Am I right?
Yes, yeah, it started with my friends Sarah and Rachel a little bit earlier. And so they would kind of say, I don't like running. I don't want to do this. And at that point, I was honestly quite annoyed with them because running is super hard. So if people are telling you, I hate this, that energy, it makes it everything a little bit harder. But then gradually, I kind of started to understand why they didn't like it. Part of it wasn't about like the culture of the team or anything like that. It was about me and the environment for me because I'm very type A, very perfectionistic.
Yeah.
So being on this team where winning was really important and intensity was valued, I just completely fell into that loop of always wanting to be the best, always wanting to run the fastest time, doing every workout to a T, even if I shouldn't have because I didn't feel good. And just kind of, it was a lot of exercise and I wasn't eating enough. So then I would end up getting sick about once a month. And it was just, it took a toll on my body. And so I had this period where I was getting chronic headaches for about 8 months. I missed some running during that time. And then when I was coming back from that, I started to really hate it. And so it was kind of weird because I never thought that that would have happened to me because I loved it so much before.
Right. And Nicole, we'll get back to running in a bit. We'll talk about the state championship, but one of the things you've done recently is you wrote a book. You came out with a book, and of course, it's an inspirational story about running, but it's also about going through personal struggles. And you alluded to this a couple times already, but I think it was seventh grade. You were in English class, and you had to write about uh, your most indispensable possession and where I was and stuff like that. And you started to have struggles, like you said, with eating and stuff like that. So talk about the book, but talk about why you decided to write the book.
Okay, yeah. So in seventh grade in English class, we had to write about our most important possession. And I said that my race bibs were because each one has a different story. And the teacher wrote, "Oh, that's a great idea for a book." And so it ended up being not quite as fun as that. There was kind of a heavier topic. But I started writing about mental health my senior year of high school. We had to give speeches,
Yeah.
and so one of my speeches was kind of about um, body image as a runner and things like that. And then I started writing for this online running blog, and I wrote um, two articles. One was more so about perfectionism and kind of letting go of that and deciding that maybe competitive running isn't the best for everyone's mental health. Could be, could not be, and kind of talking about how I didn't think it was the best for me. And then the other one was about how I really struggled with my physical health because of under eating and over exercising. And the responses were just overwhelmingly positive. I could not believe it. So many people related to what I wrote, like almost an alarming number, because I've never really read about topics like these. That's kind of why I wrote it. Um, so just based on people's feedback and coaches telling me they wanted their athletes to read what I wrote, that's kind of what inspired me to trace this whole journey of when I started running, because there were a lot of ups and downs, and I think that eating disorders are really prevalent in the distance running community.
Right. And the thing about it too, Nicole, and again, I'm no expert on eating disorders, but I would think that when you're not eating a lot and you're going out there and running, that's dangerous on your body as well because your body's not getting enough nutrition. And you, when you're running maybe in heat, blistering hot heat, that could have been very scary for you. But the thing that is interesting is that people don't realize until they actually go through it how hard it is to struggle with things that you have in your mind no control over. And eating disorder is a very hard thing because guess what? I mean, people every day they really struggle with weight. It's not easy. We all have those moments and we all feel like, okay, either we're too big or too skinny, stuff like that. So it's a real serious illness that people don't realize. And sometimes I think they take for granted and don't really sympathize with what people are going through with that like they should.
Absolutely. There's so many things in there that I want to comment on. The first being, well, oh man, you said a lot of good things, but sympathizing, empathizing, that's part of the reason why I really wanted to write this, is because I have a really good memory and I'm also very emotional. So I can remember like what it felt like during certain times when I was struggling. And when I remember that, I just think, oh my gosh, like I need to do what I can to help other people, because like someone right now, a lot of people right now are going through that. And that just pains me because it's very, very debilitating. And I think that it's one of those things when I look back, I don't know how I did that for that long. It's horrible. And like you said, a lot of people don't understand what it's like. I think kind of talk about a lot of different mental health challenges in the book, but it's a completely different frame of mind. So if we're talking about an eating disorder, it's not like, oh, I skipped a meal or, I think I'm fat today. And with anxiety, it's not, oh, I'm nervous. It's like I'm having panic attacks like
Yeah.
all the time. And so things like that. And I think if you don't understand that, then just consider yourself lucky. That's how I kind of try to look at it because a lot of people don't get it, but I'm hoping that more people will kind of grasp the seriousness and the challenges that go along with that.
Right. And Nicole, I would think that sometimes when you're going through something like that, and again, I'm just, guessing, but sometimes you feel like you're going at it alone because you probably think at the time when it's happening, people aren't going to understand what you're dealing with. And I'm sure maybe you were worried that at times people were going to judge you for stuff like that. But let me ask you, I mean, were there those moments where like you thought, you know what, I can't talk to anybody about this. It's just something I have to do on my own. I mean, did you go through periods of that when you were battling those problems?
Definitely. The whole time, pretty much, because in middle school, I was super, super underweight. So then in high school, I had gained a lot of weight back, and I would always kind of teeter from underweight to just being a healthy weight. So I kind of, I don't want to say lied to myself, but I justified it by saying, oh, like it was so much worse back then. Like I'm fine now. Like this is okay. But then there were times where I kind of knew something was wrong, but I kind of just told myself, well, like this is how your life's going to be because like I didn't see any way out of it at all. And I didn't tell anyone about it till a doctor my freshman year of college basically said, you're underweight, your heart rate's low, your blood pressure's low, like you could collapse and die, you need to figure this out. And so then finally when she said that, I kind of broke down and then I told her and then she helped me make a plan to recover from that.
Right. So I would think, Nicole, because you had talked about seventh and eighth grade things like that, this was something that you battled off and on for probably 5 or 6 years, right?
Exactly. Yeah. It would usually, I feel like it manifested in different ways. And if I was stressed out, it would definitely get worse. There's always more than one factor that goes into these kinds of issues. Um, but I'd say there were a few constants. Definitely, like I always knew how much I weighed and I always knew how many calories I was eating. And so that almost tied into the culture on the high school team because we cared a lot about the pace that we ran. So I had all these numbers running through my head like day by day. I got so good at math because when I was doing my runs, like I would add in my head, okay, like what's my pace based on the total time? Like how many calories did I eat today? Like things like that I just got so used to. But now looking back, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, like I would never do that now because I'm not dealing with that issue."
Right. And let me ask you, Nicole, now that you you recognize the problem you were having, and it's, I'm sure every day it it's, I don't want to say a battle, but it's there always, like that you have to make sure you're doing the right things, like, and taking care of yourself, but it's still a struggle because like anything else, it's never easy to just overcome like people think. So I'm sure that you would probably be somebody that would be great to talk at schools or talk at functions about what you dealt with. I mean, is that something that you want to continue to do as time goes on?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that representation is really important in all aspects of mental health. Um, I've had some mentors, like at Southern, that's where I go to college, and they would open up to me about their struggles. And so I kind of would see, okay, these people are very successful and they've struggled with this, they've overcome it. And that was really motivating and inspirational to me. So I think that when you see people recover, and then you hear their stories that are very transparent, it does make a big difference, while also, like you said, acknowledging that there are lingering challenges and that you can't just turn it on and off.
Right. And I think, Nicole, too, that it obviously when you're not going at it alone, because everybody struggles with different things in their life, and there's a lot of people in the world that struggle with eating disorders. So I think, like, when you can get together with someone who's went through what you went through, you can there's a bond there that you make, because you both can relate to each other, or you can relate to that person about what you all had to overcome. So I think that, you know, is also a positive, because you get these great friendships and you connect with people and you tell your stories. And I think that's something that, is a big positive that came out of all of this.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is one of my favorite parts. If someone will text me and say, "Hey, what was the name of your nutritionist?" Things like that, giving them a resource, or someone saying, "Thank you for writing that. I really related to that." And I had no idea that they were going through that. And just kind of the exchange of information, the exchange of stories. In distance running, a lot of female runners lately have been coming out with their own stories that are very, very similar. So mine is just different in the sense that I'm not a professional runner. So that might be more relatable to people because most people aren't professional runners, but it is like starting to come out of people talking more about this issue.
Right. And I would think this, Nicole, as talented of a runner as you are, and all the, great things you did in your running career, I think that the most impressive thing is the fact that you wrote this book and you were brave enough to tell your story, because I think people don't realize, you know, it's harder to tell your story and tell people what you were going through in your life than it is to throw a touchdown pass or win a race or make a basket. Because guess what? I mean, that's in a big crowd. You're playing a game. It's a team sport. But when you're dealing with something like this in your personal life, it's not always easy to let it out and be brave.
Thank you. Yeah, it was very difficult to kind of start writing and to just be okay with that. But like you said, I think that doing this is probably one of the most important things I've ever done for sure. But even just like looking at mental health, anything that I've had to overcome, any mental illness I've had, um, overcoming that was much more difficult than writing a book or running a marathon or going to
Yeah.
college. It's just, it's a different thing. And I think people really underestimate the toll that it takes.
Yeah, most definitely. So let's talk a little bit about your junior and senior year, because, again, the teams were so good. And talk about that 2016 team, Nicole, because I know going into that season, again, that's pressure, because everybody said you girls had to win the state title. Like, it would be a disappointment if you didn't. And you win the MVL again, and then you girls left nothing in doubt in the Class S championship. You girls went out there, dominated, and you got Derby, that first cross country championship. That had to just be such a rewarding and unbelievable feeling. So talk about that a little bit.
Oh, I I wish it was kind of like you said. For me, it was a little different. I trained super hard over the whole summer, and then I had a great first meet, and then I got a sinus infection, and then I went to get it looked at, and they gave me antibiotics, and I said, "Can I run?" They said, "Yep, it's not in your chest. You're all good to go." 2 weeks later, didn't go away. Went back to the doctor, gave me more antibiotics, and then it turned into migraine medication and so many different things, and I was just sick. And I would miss a few practices, but I just kept running because doctors kept telling me, like, it's not in your chest, you can run. Maybe I should have elaborated how much I was running, but I was just like, oh, okay. So then by time the day of the state championship meet came around, I was like completely burnt out, completely numb, completely emotionless. So we did win and everyone seemed very, very excited, but I wasn't there mentally. So looking back on a lot of things, I have struggled with depression many times, and that's a difficult thing because you look back on something that should have been so great and you're almost mad at yourself. Like, why wasn't I happy that should have been one of the best days ever? But then when you get depressed again, you remember because it's not your fault. You were stuck.
Right. And let me ask you, now that it's been 6 years, I mean, do you find yourself appreciating it a lot more because you could kind of look back and realize what you girls accomplished? Because I mean, any way you look at it, Nicole, in a small town like Derby, to win a Class S championship, that's a tremendous feat, no matter how you look at it.
Absolutely. I know. I think most people say in general, especially about running, is that as they get older, they can't believe that they thought that they were slow when they were younger. And I think all my teammates would say that because we were so hard on ourselves. Gabby and Kylie were really hard on themselves. And so it was such a cool thing, such a great thing. And I think that we kind of underestimated how big of a thing it actually was. We were kind of in the moment. So looking back
Right.
at it, I'm like, that's pretty cool.
And I
So
mean, it had to be cool too, Nicole, to have people cheering you girls on when you're coming back from the meet. And of course, there was that great sign that they put up around Route 34, home of the 2016 champions. I mean, I just think about how it started for you running in fifth grade, all you girls running very early at a young age. And then the coaches you had along the way, Gazzo, DeLugo. And then you had Muzz, who came back and he kind of like helped out in any way he could. And I think there was Andrews, I believe she was very good. So talk about the coaches a little bit because they really did everything they could each and every day to make you girls as the very best you could be.
oh yeah, they all really did and they contributed a lot. I think when I look back, um, that's something that I think about. Like, this isn't normal to have all these people who want to coach cross country, who want to coach track. And in middle school, I mean, Gazzo's Gazzo, everyone loves him. He has that eccentric personality. He knows how to
Yeah,
rile people up and motivate them. And then there was Miss Sheridan. In the
yeah,
book, I refer to her as Apple Lady because she was the mom, she would always bring apples. So that's why I called her that. But she was a very warming presence. And then we had Mr. Sabula. He was a gym teacher at the time. He was very positive, always jumping around, always cheering for everyone, very motivational as well. Then we had Miss Ames. She was very good at kind of just building self esteem and self confidence among the girls' team. And then Miss Andrews was there a lot.
yeah.
And then in high school, we had Coach DeLugo. Me and him have very, very similar personalities, very intense. So he was great. And then there was Coach Lucia. I just remember her. She would always do planks with us. I know that's a very specific thing, but she would always get right down with us and do core workouts. So, like, just talking about it now, that's a lot of people. So
Yeah. And
it's
I mean, and I think that helped in a sense too, like, because you were dealing with, the struggles you had went through in your life, but you had those friends there, you had coaches there. So it was probably an escape for you where I'm sure it was always on your mind, but at the same time, you could kind of have a little escape and also have fun as well, like being around all of them.
definitely, yeah. Every coach that I've ever had was always very supportive of me. I think that none of them probably knew what was going on. And if they did, they tried to help me as much as they could with what they knew. So I will always appreciate that so much. And then teammates, yeah, I mean, being on the same team as people for 7 years, training 5 days a week, all year round, you really get to know them and you really learn to rely on them and trust them. And you guys, you just care about each other.
Right. And Nicole, you go to college, you decide at this point you want to take a break from running because it was just so much in high school, so much running you needed a break. But you did run a couple half marathons, if I remember correctly, right?
I did, yeah. In track, the longest race was the 3,200, 2 miles, and I always said that's way too short. Oh, I can't run fast when I'm only running that short. So I said I want to try a half marathon. And a half marathon is kind of a different race because you don't know what to do until you do it and you do it wrong. And then you could do it again and kind of fix it. I mean, a lot of things in life are like that. But I really like that distance. I think that it's challenging, but it's not as taxing as the marathon.
Right, exactly. And about this book too, that's impressive, Nicole, is I think you started writing it in the spring of 21 and you continued it through the fall of 21. And then I think like it was completed in December of 21 and one of your professors saw it and encouraged you to get that published, right?
Yeah. Yeah, once I got the idea to write it at Southern, I had to do some kind of big project because I was in the honors college. So, in order to graduate with that from their program, you have to do a thesis or a big project. So, I kind of connected with an advisor, and she sent me over to a professor in the English department who does creative writing, and she was also a runner. And so she helped me with the whole thesis process. And then at the end of it, that was last fall, there was someone at the thesis defense who said, you should really do more with this. And she was a sports psychology professor who said that. And so I was like, maybe I will.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you're you're concentrating on studies and you're writing this book. So I mean, the thing that, like I said, is really remarkable about you is you're always doing something. You're very innovative and you are very motivated to do what you set out to do. And I think that's says a lot about you as a person because you don't just stop and focus just on studies. You're trying to do different things. You're trying to tell your story. And I think by telling it, you're hoping you could help someone who's probably battling the same struggles you were. So, I mean, that says a lot about you and the type of person you really are.
Oh, thank you so much. But yeah, you really hit the nail on the head with helping people because I feel like when you write something, you're always worried that just every single person who reads it is going to hate it and say it's the worst thing that they've ever read. But I was like, if everyone thinks that, that's okay as long as I help one person. So I think I have. I hope I've helped one person. But my thesis advisor, that professor in the English department, she said something along the lines of, we're all just writing the books that we needed on the shelves when we were younger. And so that's really how it was for me. I think maybe if I had read a book like this when I was younger, things could have been different. So I can't do anything about my story, but I can try to help the people younger than I or the people who are early on into that
Right,
distorted eating pattern.
right. And tomorrow will be 1 month since you got the book published. So, I mean, the book went out September 1st. I believe it's on Amazon, right?
It is. That's a great observation. My concept of time is very far off. I can't believe it's been a month.
Yeah, and let me ask you, Nicole. I was thinking about this because it's something that I think you would do a great job with. But is there a thought to maybe start a podcast about uh, struggles in life, not necessarily eating disorders, but just going through mental health and mental illness that people go through, and kind of having different guests that come on who have dealt with the same type of struggles you have? I mean, is there a thought that you might want to do a podcast down the road about that?
I never thought about it, but now that you mention it, that would be pretty cool. I can be very annoying, so I would have a lot of
Mhm.
guests to kind of balance me out. But I think that is really important. I listen to a lot of mental health podcasts, and I do find that the ones that resonate with me the most are kind of like their personal stories. Some of the ones from the bigger organizations like Mental Health America, um, they're a little bit, they're more technical, more sciency. They don't really help you in the moment when you're struggling. I think that hearing other people and exactly what they do is really helpful. So, yeah, I think that would be very cool.
Right. So, Nicole, let me ask you, going forward, like, what year are you in college now? Your senior year, I believe, or is it junior year?
I'm a first year grad student.
First year grad student. So you've already gotten your bachelor's. Now you're in graduate school. But where do you hope to be like in the next 3 to 5 years? I mean, is there a plan in sight that you know what you want to do as far as what does Nicole Rizzo want to do when she's like 25 years old?
So if you asked me that a year ago, I would have said, yep, I've got it all planned out. I know exactly what's going to happen. I'm going to make it happen. Now, no, nope, no. I am having an identity crisis, but in a good way, I think. I'm glad that I don't recognize my past self. I'm really glad. But I think I learned that, a year ago, if you told me that I would be doing a interview right now and that my book would be published and that I'd be in grad school at this school and all these different things, I would have said, like, no, what are you talking about? So I realized that it's almost better for me to not even plan it because I don't know what's going to happen. And I'm okay with that. I used to need to control everything, how much I ate, how much I worked out, what my future would look like. But I don't feel the need to do that anymore.
Right. And Nicole, I would say this though, you don't look like someone who focuses on yourself in the sense with accomplishments and accolades. Like I think you take more pride in seeing others do well. But at the same time, you got to be very proud of yourself, not just for what you're doing in your personal life as far as college goes and stuff like that, but the fact that you went through some tough times, some rough patches in your life, and here you are today, and you just seem so inspiring and so impactful that I would say you have to be very proud of what you're doing in 2022.
Well, thank you first. Yes, 2022 itself it's been a really like life-changing year. So I had an episode of severe depression this year. So I'm just really, really glad to be alive. So I am proud of myself for keeping going. And every day I kind of wake up and, when I go to these grad school classes and work with my clients, I'm just like, oh my gosh, like life is great. It's a beautiful day to be alive. So I guess I'm proud of myself in that sense, if that makes sense. Kind of just being proud to keep going and proud. I'm proud of like the things that I am able to do now.
Exactly. So Nicole, before we go, what if you could send one message to anybody who's listening to this who may be struggling with depression, who is going through a tough time in their life, what is the best message you could or advice you could offer to them if they are listening to your story? What would you want them to get out of what you talked about tonight?
One message. This is hard because I'm a writer. So anytime someone says one message, I'm like, let me choose wisely. Um, I would say getting help is very, very, very worth it. That is the best thing I've ever done. My life is, I didn't think that it could be like this, but it is. So whether that looks like for you, for eating, going to a nutritionist or seeing a therapist, or for anxiety or depression, if it's joining a group therapy, doing an intensive outpatient, like whatever you have to do, um, it's worth it. And then I hate to say one more thing, but I'm going to pretend it's tied to what I just said. So I'm still following your parameters. But I think the other thing is that it's okay to pause. It's not okay to quit. So you can
Right.
always pause, you can always rest. That's fine. You just can't quit.
Right. Well, I think that's a great attitude, Nicole. And number one, I really do applaud you for everything you're doing because, you are proof that it doesn't matter what may have been going on at one point. You're not going to give up. You're going to keep fighting. And it maybe some days, someday, maybe at times you're going to fall, but you're going to keep getting back up. It doesn't mean that, life ends because you're having a rough day. You're going to keep doing whatever you can. And what you're doing and how you wrote this book and the message you're trying to send to people. I really do believe that, like I said a couple minutes ago, you really are an impactful person and you're inspiring so many people. And I really do applaud you for that. And thank you for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it so much.
Well, it was my pleasure, and thank you again. Well, folks, there you have it. You just got to know the person, Nicole Rizzo, for the last hour. You learned many things: an outstanding athlete, tremendous runner. We knew that, we knew how good she was, but we didn't realize the personal struggles she was going through in her life. How could we? Because we didn't really know her that well yet, but we got to listen to her over this last hour. And one thing I took out of it more than anything else, she may have been a champion in sports, but she's even better champion in life because what she's doing every day, inspiring people, uh, doing everything she can to help anyone who may need her help because she went through some tough times is just extraordinary. And she really is a remarkable person who's not going to give up no matter how tough times may get. You know, Jim Vavano once came out with a quote that a lot of us have always tried to, you know, take with us whenever times are tough. It was called "Don't Give Up, Don't Ever Give Up." Well, I think Jim Vavano was talking about Nicole Rizzo as well because she hasn't given up and she's a tremendous person. For Hometown Heroes, I'm Mike Kenichi saying good night, everyone.